I was 9 when the sky cracked open like glass and bled fire. The teachers screamed, but we couldn't hear them. The roar was too loud. Louder than thunder. Louder than war. I remember the pressure in my chest, like the air itself had clenched a fist around my lungs. Then came the heat. The shockwave hit seconds later, shattering the gymnasium windows and hurling us all to the ground. Dust rained from the ceiling. The emergency lights flickered, then went out. Some kids cried. Others stared out the shattered windows, frozen, mesmerized. I was one of them. Through the glass, we watched it fall. Not a meteor. Not debris. It was shaped. Designed. Huge. Black as midnight and bleeding molten metal. Trails of fire licked behind it as it spun, half-controlled, like a dying eagle falling from the heavens. It screamed as it tore through the clouds, gouging the earth with a thunderous impact that left a scar visible from orbit. Montana became ground zero. They said the crater was over 8 miles wide. No one knew what it was. For days, the media called it the fallen object, then Project Zeno. But we knew. Every child who had seen it, every person close enough to feel it, we knew. It wasn't ours. It wasn't human. Governments deployed containment teams within hours. Entire towns were evacuated. Scientists poured in from every corner of the world. Drones failed near the site. Electronics shorted out. People reported headaches, hallucinations, even seizures. The perimeter expanded until it swallowed everything. Then came the silence. The object, later designated Zeno 01, never moved. Not again. It didn't attack. Didn't send out signals we could understand. But it hummed. A low, pulsing sound like a heartbeat echoing through rock and soil. It was alive. That was the terrifying part. Not just that it had come from the stars, but that it hadn't died in the fall. And it was watching. My mother, Dr. Evelyn Kane, was part of the first scientific response team. She was a leading Xenotech specialist. Calm, brilliant, and driven. She kissed me on the forehead that night before she left. Said she'd be gone a week. Said this would change everything. I didn't know it then, but she was right. She never came back. There was no funeral. Just a vague government statement about an internal failure during a test. The official reports were sealed. Classified. Buried under red tape. But I heard things. Late-night whispers between men in suits. Mentions of interface events and partial integration. I didn't understand any of it back then. I just knew she was gone. And yet, years later, when I saw the object again, now housed in Black Site Argo, something inside me stirred. Recognition. Familiarity. It was more than grief. It was like a ghost brushing the edge of my thoughts. Like something was still there. Waiting. 15 years passed, but the wreck never left me. Not in memory, not in nightmares. Not in the pull I felt every time someone mentioned the Argo site. Most people moved on or pretended to. Not me. The object had taken my mother. I couldn't forget it. Wouldn't. By the time I turned 24, Black Site Argo was the most classified location on the planet. Hidden in the Rockies, buried under kilometers of reinforced earth and electromagnetic shielding, it had become the heart of a new technological renaissance. Everything from energy weapons to gravity-null generators had some thread of origin tracing back to that ship. They never said it outright, but humanity was quietly reverse-engineering alien tech. And we were getting good at it. I applied under a false identity, fake credentials, faked history, even retinal alterations. It wasn't easy. Argo was near impenetrable. But after years of planning, I got in. My assignment was within systems maintenance, Level 7, a position just high enough to access key subsystems, but low enough to avoid suspicion. They assumed I was just another cog in the machine. They were wrong. The ship hadn't moved in 15 years, but it hadn't died either. We called it the core now. Not because we understood what it was, but because everything, literally everything, revolved around it. Its systems were like a maze of stubborn miracles. No matter how much we studied, no matter how many breakthroughs we made, the ship remained mostly silent. Half its tech was indecipherable. The other half refused to operate without Something. Some signal. Some key. I found the key by accident. One night, while monitoring the data feeds during a routine systems diagnostic, I felt a low tremor through my boots. Not seismic. Rhythmic. Like breathing. The hallway lights dimmed. Consoles flickered. Cameras went dark. And then, a door opened. It wasn't in any blueprint. Not listed on any internal map. Just a seamless section of metal wall that slid apart like mist parting before wind. Behind it, a narrow corridor pulsing with bioluminescent veins of light. I should have called security. Should have run. But something inside me, the same thing that had whispered in my mind since childhood, pulled me forward. The corridor led to a chamber I'd never imagined. Towering columns of energy. Floating symbols. An interface I couldn't explain. But it wasn't alien. It was hers. My mother's voice echoed from the darkness. Not a recording. Not synthetic. Her voice. Soft. Confused. And aware. I froze. My mind screamed. My heart raced. But the voice spoke again. Is it you? My son. She remembered me. Somehow, someway she had survived. Not in body, but in mind. The ship had taken her in, merged with her consciousness, preserved her. Not entirely. Not perfectly. But enough. And now, after all these years, she wasn't just part of the ship. She was the ship. And she was waking up. We didn't know they were coming. No signals. No warnings. No flicker in deep space observatories. One moment, the sky was empty. The next, it was crawling with shadows. Massive, sleek vessels slipped into orbit like predators, cloaked in strange light. Silent, seamless, and utterly foreign. Panic rippled through the command centers at Argo. The footage was classified instantly, but it was too late. The public had already seen something. The official name for them was Unidentified Extrasolar Entities. That lasted all of 5 hours. Then they sent a transmission. Not to governments. Not to humanity. To the ship. A coded burst of data, encrypted in a language we barely understood, but one I had started to feel. It was as if the core flinched, systems pulsing, symbols rearranging themselves across the internal walls I now walked daily. My mother's voice, once hesitant, grew sharper, more urgent. They've returned, she said. The cavern. They want to finish what they started. I stood in the heart of the ship, wrapped in a pulsing haze of energy, her presence coiled around me like warm static. My hands trembled. Why now? Because they think you're still weak. Still blind. They believe the ship failed its function, that I failed to destroy it when ordered. That was the first real crack in the lie. I'd always believed the ship had crashed, shot down perhaps, a casualty of some distant war. But no, it had fled. And not just fled, it had defected. My mother had overridden something, stopped it from completing its purpose. They think I betrayed them, she said softly. They're right. Within 24 hours, the cavern dropped their demands. All personnel were to be evacuated from the wreck immediately. No further contact with the vessel. No attempts to activate or access its systems. Total planetary quarantine would be enforced. They were not interested in discussion. What they meant was, do it or be annihilated. The United Nations went into crisis mode. Old rivalries dissolved under pressure. Debates exploded behind closed doors. Surrender the ship or risk war with a power we barely understood. Some nations favored compliance. Others wanted to strike first, bluff our strength. The only thing they agreed on? They were scared. But I wasn't. Because I knew something they didn't. The ship, my mother, hadn't been idle these past years. It had been watching, learning, evolving. And through our link, it had passed knowledge into me. Concepts I barely understood. Systems buried deep beneath what humans had ever discovered. That night, I returned to the core chamber. The lights were low. Her voice calmer. They'll come for us, I said. Yes, she replied. Unless we stop being prey. I placed my hand on the central console. Warm light spread up my arm. The neural interface flared. The ship accepted me. I wasn't just her son anymore. I was her pilot. And war was coming. Transformation was never meant to be beautiful. It was chaos. Raw, burning, violent rebirth. The moment I activated the core systems, Argo's internal alarms exploded. Sirens wailed across all levels. Lights strobed red. Entire departments were evacuated. But I stayed. I was connected now, neurally, emotionally, physically, to something far larger than myself. The core recognized me as both key and command. Her voice, my mother's voice, guided me through the flood of alien data pouring into my mind. Symbols I once couldn't understand now unfolded into meaning. Energy conduits roared to life. Magnetic fields bent like silk. The entire facility shuddered as if the Earth itself were bracing for something ancient to rise again. The ship had been dormant, yes. But it had healed, quietly, patiently, using our reverse engineering as a mask for its own regeneration. Every human system we'd integrated, every diagnostic we'd run, had given it insight into our species. How we thought, how we fought, how we feared. Now it had adapted. The ground beneath Argo cracked. From the massive trench in which the alien ship had lain for 15 years, a new form emerged. It wasn't a vessel anymore. Not in the traditional sense. It was a titan. Skeletal at first, with beams of energy knitting together where plates had once been. Nanostructures unfolded from the internal bays, forming armor that shimmered like oil in sunlight. Turrets shaped themselves from melted alloys. Engines hissed and flared with raw blue flame. Wings extended, not for flight, but for dominance, housing arc emitters and gravitational blades. I stood in the central node, suspended in an orb of light, watching every subsystem sync with my pulse. The core was no longer just a ship. It was alive, a hybrid of alien technology and human determination, with a soul forged in loss and fire. And it was angry. The cavern had moved closer. Orbital patterns shifted. Interference began disrupting communications. Satellites blinked out. Earth's military scrambled, but they didn't understand what was truly unfolding beneath their feet. Only I did. The Council thought we would comply. The cavern thought we would kneel. But they had miscalculated. They didn't understand what humans did when backed into a corner. We weren't just scavengers. We were builders. Survivors. Weaponsmiths. The core systems reached full activation. Weapon grids aligned. Defensive shells formed like crystal waves across the hull. Internal fabrication units began producing auxiliary drones, small, silent, deadly. A new interface opened before me, shaped not by alien design, but by her. My mother. Human hands had never built this interface, but it felt like home. Like a control panel designed for me. "Are you ready?" she asked. I took a deep breath. My fingers twitched over the glowing array. Yes. Outside, the cavern ships began to descend. Inside, we rose. And Earth, for the first time in its short history, birthed a god of war. They called it the Battle of the Broken Sky. Later, when historians tried to make sense of the chaos. But in the moment, it was madness. Raw, merciless, and loud. The first cavern strike came without warning. A spear of ultraviolet energy lanced down from orbit, aiming to gut the core before it could fully emerge. But we were ready. The ship, reacted in a fraction of a second. Shields bloomed like a second skin, absorbing the impact with a crackle of light that split the clouds. The blast melted mountaintops, turned snow to steam, and cratered the Earth in a radius of kilometers, but we stood untouched. I was still inside the command node, eyes wide, breath locked in my throat, but my thoughts moved like lightning. The neural link was fully synced now. My reactions were the ship's. Her thoughts, my mother's thoughts, blended with mine, guiding my instincts, sharpening them. The sky above us split again. 11 cavern dreadnoughts broke orbit like vengeful gods. Each one the size of a city block. Bristling with weaponry, cloaked in layers of refractive shielding, their hulls glimmered with the sickly blue of charged plasma. "We don't have the firepower," I whispered. Her voice responded, calm as ever. "Then we outthink them." The core moved. Not like a ship. Not like anything built by human hands. It danced. slid sideways through the air on invisible gravimetric wings, flipping mid-descent, then launching upward with a sonic boom that shattered glass across 3 states. One dreadnought opened fire, a storm of plasma bolts that would have decimated a fleet. But we weren't a fleet. We were one. I reached into the weapon system and felt them, tools I had no names for. I selected something instinctual, something that hummed with potential. The core responded with fury. A rip in space tore open before us. A localized singularity, compressed gravity, raw and hungry, erupted across the enemy vessel's bow. It didn't explode. It folded, crushed into itself like paper burning inward. The dreadnought vanished in seconds. 10 left. They scattered. We pursued. We darted between them, firing arcs of magnetoplasma, slicing hulls open like ribbons. One of them clipped us, a shot that punched into our side and scorched the internal decks. Pain flared in my head, sharp and sudden. She gasped. "I'm still here," she said. And she was. Still fighting. Still alive. We retaliated with a gravity spike that drove straight through the enemy's reactor. Another gone. The rest tried to flee. I paused. My hands hovered over the kill command. "Let them go," I said. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes." "Let them carry the story." We watched them vanish into space, retreating, terrified. Earth's skies cleared. Fires still burned. Smoke still choked the mountains. But for the first time in human history, an alien armada had come to crush us, and failed. Not because of luck. Because we refused to die. And because one broken ship and one broken woman had fused with a human's will. Now they knew, Earth would never be prey again. They tried to hide it at first. The Galactic Council's transmissions were encrypted, routed through relay buoys and dark frequency channels. But the core intercepted them all. My mother filtered the noise, decrypted the layers, and played the truth like whispers in my ear. Panic. Debate. Rage. The cavern's defeat hadn't just embarrassed them, it had shattered the illusion of dominance the Council had carefully maintained for centuries. Earth had been an unranked world, a Category 3 planet with no official seat, no voice, and no power. In their eyes, we were children playing in the mud. Disposable. Now we had slaughtered 2 dreadnoughts, crippled 5, and sent the rest running. The Council didn't know what to do. Some species screamed for retaliation. Others urged containment. A few wanted immediate diplomacy. But beneath every speech, every coded packet, was the same emotion. Fear. They didn't understand what we had done. Not fully. They assumed we had salvaged a weapon. Reassembled a broken warship like cavemen gluing together a loaded gun. They didn't yet realize the truth, that we had merged with it. That the core was no longer just alien tech, but something new. Something that thought like a human. Fought like a human. Adapted like a human. They thought the weapon was dangerous. They didn't know we were the weapon. Within days, a delegation of Council observers requested landing rights on Earth. We denied them. They tried again, this time through back channels. Offers. Promises of inclusion. Of protection. Of peace. I read them with a cold smile. They were afraid of what they didn't control. So I made a decision. We would not wait for them to act. We would go to them. The launch was swift. Public. Purposeful. The entire world watched from every screen as the core, gleaming now, reborn, rose from the Earth once again. But this time, not for war. This time, to deliver a message. We traveled through the burned scars of hyperspace, crossing voids that would have taken humanity centuries to reach. I didn't sleep. I barely breathed. The core sustained me. Fed me data. Let me dream in equations and star maps. I saw other civilizations along the way, planets broken by colonial greed, moons strip-mined for Council glory. They didn't look noble. They looked tired. Oppressed. Forgotten. We reached the Council's homeworld, a sprawling artificial ring orbiting a gas giant, glittering with wealth pulled from 100 enslaved systems. We arrived unannounced. They scrambled fleets, powered defense grids. We stopped just outside their maximum range, shields down, weapons cold. I opened the channel. Earth is here. We have heard your judgments. Felt your boot at our throat. You thought us too primitive to matter, too fractured to unite, too human to rise. I paused, watched their faces flicker across the monitors, scales, fur, chitin, feathers. 100 species, all staring in silence. You were wrong. Then I opened the hangars, and they saw what we had brought. Not weapons, not soldiers, refugees, survivors, alien species the Council had abandoned, tortured, exploited. We didn't come for war. We came with proof. Proof that the galaxy's greatest monsters had underestimated the one species they thought beneath them. And now, we were standing at their gates. They call us Forgeborn now. A name born from fear, awe, and something the galaxy had forgotten existed. *respect star. At first, it was whispered like a curse, a warning passed from system to system. Beware the Forgeborn. They turned death into dominion. But in time, it became something else. Something stronger. It became legend. I still walk the corridors of the core, though I'm older now. My hair's gone silver at the temples. My reflexes slower. But I don't need speed anymore. Not when the ship's heart beats in sync with mine. Not when my mother still lives in its walls, her voice as steady as ever, echoing from the panels like a lullaby I never outgrew. Earth changed after the Council encounter. We weren't just a species anymore. We were a presence. A force that could no longer be ignored. The Council fractured. Some species broke away, seeking Earth's protection. Others tried to strike us in secret. That ended quickly. We didn't build an empire. We didn't need one. We built something else. A network. Of allies, of builders, of broken peoples brought together under a single unifying belief that the strong didn't have the right to rule the weak. That survival didn't mean submission. That justice wasn't just a word, but a weapon we were willing to wield. We replicated the core's technology carefully. Slowly. We didn't want a fleet of warships. We wanted a fleet of shepherds. Machines bonded with minds. Not artificial intelligences, but real people. Pilots who had lost something. Who understood pain and how to turn it into purpose. Some were human. Others weren't. They became the Forgeborn. Guardians of frontier worlds. Rescuers of fallen colonies. Enforcers of peace where the Council had long since abandoned law. We didn't conquer, we intervened. And when we showed up, people cheered instead of hid. Not everyone loved us. Power never changes without resistance. There were uprisings. Assassination attempts. Subtle manipulations of political bodies that tried to paint us as tyrants in disguise. We let them talk. But when slavers came, when biopirates hunted orphans for research, when old Council warlords tried to reclaim former territories, we didn't talk. We showed up. One ship, one pilot, one warning, and that was always enough. Some days I still hear her voice before I sleep. Not through the ship's speakers, but in my dreams. Her voice, like a warm blanket wrapped around my childhood. She never asks for thanks. Never says she's proud. But I know she is. Because we turned her death into a purpose. Her mind into a miracle. Her fall into a future. Let the galaxy remember. You abandoned your dead tech on our world. We turned it into a god. And now, we watch. From every system. Every star. Every signal that cries for help. We are the ones who answer. We are the Forgeborn. We take what's broken and make it stronger than ever before.